Think about the earliest memory you have. Maybe it's a birthday. Maybe it's a fall from a bike, or a hospital room, or your mother's hand letting go of yours on the first day of school. You can see the colors. You can hear the sounds. It feels like proof that it happened, exactly as you remember it. But here's the real answer, and it's far stranger than you think. That memory might not be real at all. Not in the way you believe it is. Your brain doesn't record memories. It builds them. Every single time you remember something, you are not opening a file. You are writing a new draft. That sounds impossible. Memories feel so solid. So how could something so vivid be, in part, invented? In the 1930s, a British psychologist named Frederick Bartlett ran an experiment that should unsettle you. He asked people to read an unfamiliar folk story called War of the Ghosts, then recall it days, weeks, even years later. What he found changed the way scientists think about memory forever. People didn't just forget details, they changed them. They replaced unfamiliar elements with things that made more sense to them. Canoes became boats. Hunting became fishing. The story quietly shifted to fit what each person already believed about the world. Bartlett called this reconstructive memory. You don't retrieve the past. You rebuild it, using the scaffolding of your current beliefs, your culture, your expectations. Before Bartlett, most scientists assumed memory worked like a filing cabinet. Store an experience, pull it out later, unchanged. Bartlett's participants proved otherwise. The story they recalled after a year barely resembled the one they'd originally read. It had been smoothed over, made more familiar, quietly edited to feel like something that made sense to a person living in 1930s England, rather than in the oral tradition it came from. He called the process effort after meaning. Your brain doesn't tolerate confusion well. Given a strange or incomplete experience, it fills the gaps automatically, without asking your permission and without telling you it happened. Think of it like this. Imagine handing 20 different people the exact same 5 minutes of a chaotic event. A car accident, a wedding toast that went wrong, a stranger's confrontation on the street. You wouldn't get 20 identical accounts. You'd get 20 different stories, each shaped by what that person already expected to see. And it gets stranger. In the 1990s, a researcher named Elizabeth Loftus wanted to know something unsettling. Could you plant a memory in someone's mind that never happened at all? She ran what's now known as the Lost in the Mall study. Loftus and her team told adult participants a handful of real childhood stories provided by their own families. But they slipped in one fake one, a memory of being lost in a shopping mall as a child, frightened, before being rescued by an elderly stranger. It never happened, not once. Roughly a quarter of participants didn't just believe it, they elaborated on it. They added sensory details that were never given to them. The color of the stranger's sweater, the panic rising in their chest, the look on their own parents' faces as they searched the crowd. Their brains didn't just accept a false suggestion. They built an entire emotional experience around it, then filed it away as truth. Does that mean some of your own strongest memories could be fiction? It's possible. More than possible. Loftus's decades of research suggest a striking number of adults carry at least one confidently held, richly detailed, entirely false memory from childhood and never once question it. Now here's where it gets even stranger. Memory isn't just fragile when it's first formed. It's fragile every single time you revisit it. A neuroscientist named Karim Nader ran experiments in the early 2000s on something called memory reconsolidation. The idea is simple, but the implications are enormous. Every time you recall a memory, it becomes temporarily unstable, almost like wet clay. For a short window, it can be altered, before it gets re-saved back into your brain, slightly changed from before. Nader's team showed that in rats, a fear memory could be erased entirely if the brain was disrupted during that reconsolidation window. The memory wasn't just weakened, it was rewritten from the inside. In humans, the effect is subtler, but it's just as real. Every time you tell a story from your past, you're not replaying a recording, you're recording over it, slightly, with the emotions and details of who you are right now. Which means the version of your first heartbreak you remember today is not the same memory you had 5 years ago. It's a copy of a copy of a copy, each one shaped a little more by who you've since become. This helps explain a phenomenon almost everyone has experienced, but few can name. You tell a story about your childhood for years, the same way, at family dinners, with old friends. Then one day, a sibling or a parent corrects a detail. The house wasn't blue. The dog wasn't there yet. You weren't even 5. You were 7. And you feel a strange kind of vertigo, because the memory still feels completely true, even after you've been shown it isn't. That feeling of certainty, psychologists have found, has almost nothing to do with accuracy. Confidence and correctness are not the same currency in your brain. A false memory can feel every bit as vivid, every bit as emotionally real as a true one. Sometimes more so, because each retelling adds a fresh layer of feeling on top of the original. So why would evolution build a memory system this unreliable? Because accuracy was never the goal. For most of human history, memory wasn't a record-keeping tool. It was a survival tool. Your ancestors didn't need a perfect replay of the day they spotted a predator near the river. They needed a usable warning. Fast, emotional, generalized. Stay away from rivers that look like that one. Trust people who resemble the one who helped you. Fear things that resemble what once hurt you. A memory that generalizes, exaggerates, and reshapes itself is more useful for future decisions than one that's perfectly, uselessly precise. Precision costs energy. Usefulness saves lives. In other words, your brain isn't broken. It's optimized. Just not for the thing you assumed it was optimized for. This is part of why eyewitness testimony, for decades treated as the gold standard of courtroom evidence, has been linked to a staggering number of wrongful convictions. People aren't lying on the stand. They're remembering, with total sincerity, something their brain quietly rebuilt under stress, months or years after the fact. Think about that the next time you argue with a sibling about how something happened in your childhood. You both remember it clearly. You both remember it differently. And you're both telling the truth, as your brain understands it. Bring this into your life today. Every time you scroll through old photos, you're not just looking at the past, you're editing it. A single photograph of a birthday party doesn't just remind you of that day. It replaces your fuzzy, reconstructed memory with the frozen image itself. Over time, you stop remembering the event. You start remembering the photo of the event. Researchers studying what's sometimes called the photo-taking impairment effect have found that the very act of photographing an experience can weaken your memory of living it. Your brain quietly outsources the job of remembering to the camera and takes its foot off the gas. Now multiply that by every story you've retold, every photo you've posted, every caption you've written to make a memory sound better, funnier, or more meaningful than it felt in the moment. Each retelling isn't preserving the past, it's overwriting it. Social media has turned this into something even stranger. You don't just remember your own experiences anymore, you remember other people's captions about your experiences. The version of the trip, the party, the relationship that got the most likes, becomes the version your brain quietly accepts as true, simply because it was reinforced the most, repeated the most, and rewarded the most. Consider how a family vacation actually gets remembered 10 years later. Not through the boring middle hours in the car, or the argument over dinner, or the moment nothing much happened at all. Through the 3 photographs someone chose to keep. The rest, the vast majority of what actually occurred, is quietly discarded, because your brain was never trying to preserve a complete record in the first place. It was only ever trying to preserve a usable highlight reel. Even your dreams get folded into this process. Neuroscientists have long noted that sleep plays a role in consolidating memories, deciding which experiences from the day get strengthened and which get allowed to fade. But that consolidation isn't neutral either. Emotionally intense moments get prioritized. Ordinary ones get quietly deleted. Which means the very shape of your past has already been curated for you, while you slept, by a brain doing its best guess at what might matter later. Is that a comforting thought, or a terrifying one? Maybe both. Because here's the part that should really stop you. If your memories are this malleable, then your sense of who you are is built on shifting ground. Your identity isn't a fixed record of your past. It's a story you keep quietly rewriting, draft after draft, to make sense of who you are today. That's not necessarily a flaw. It might be the whole point. Loftus herself has argued that the reconstructive nature of memory allows people to grow. If your past were locked in place, unbending, unchangeable, so would you be. The same flexibility that lets a false memory take root is the flexibility that lets you reinterpret a painful event years later and finally find peace with it. The villain in your story can become, with distance and reflection, just a person who was struggling too. The mistake that once defined you can shrink down into a lesson instead. Memory isn't just about the past. It's a tool your present self uses to negotiate a livable version of who you've been. This is why two siblings can grow up in the exact same house, under the exact same parents, and walk away with entirely different childhoods. Not because one of them is lying, because each of them was quietly building a self, and each self needed a slightly different past to make sense of it. The strict father one remembers as harsh, the other remembers as protective. Neither is wrong. Both are true, in the only way memory is ever really true. So think again about that first memory, the one you were so sure was solid, the birthday, the bike, the hand letting go of yours. It's not a photograph. It's the latest draft of a story you've been quietly rewriting your entire life. One you will keep editing until the very end, without ever noticing the pen is still in your hand.